Thank you for joining us on Empowered Kids TV and for joining us for Village Talk. I am so excited to have you here. You're here because you know that every family has the potential to be great, and you're willing to push the boundaries of your mindsets so that you can create the family of your dreams. Today, we welcome back one of our amazing coaches, Sue DeCaro. Sue DeCaro is a heart-centered coach that helps parents create more harmony and connectedness through boundaries, discipline, and confidence. A mom of two, she has helped families take advantage of their strengths to reshape family interactions in a positive way. Sue's training as a parent coach combined with her own family's experience enables her to approach every client with empathy and to craft a tailored approach to achieve their goals. Sue's mission is to help bring more laughter, love, and enjoyment to our families. And you can learn more about Sue's amazing work at DeCaroParentCoaching.com. Sue, welcome back to the village.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today.
We've got some tough ones for you today, Sue. So
Love it.
Let's dive right in. Today's question comes from Lisa. And Lisa writes, my father-in-law is very ill, and the doctors have told us to prepare for his final days. He has been sick for only a short time, and I have not really talked to my 4-year-old son about death yet. He sometimes has separation anxiety. I need help on how to explain sickness and death in a way that doesn't scare him. Can you help?
Well, Lisa, I think that, yes, this is a tough one, and this is a tough topic, but it's also a topic that is part of life. It's the circle of life. And I think as adults, it's really important that we check our own energy around these types of topics before we actually engage or even think about engaging in a conversation with our children. Because kids are so intuitive. They pick up on our energy without us even conveying how we're feeling. So if we come to this conversation scared, fearful, worried about what they're going to think or how they're going to react, they know it. And they pick up on that energy as well as the words, and it makes it an even tougher conversation. I think, again, death sadly is a part of life, but I think it's very important to have these conversations with children on a level that the child can manage. Just like we talk about birth, or we talk about, giving birth when a child asks. When we talk about death, it has to be at the age and stage of that particular child, not at the age and stage of a 4-year-old or 11-year-old, but of your particular child and what they can manage. I think the next thing is keeping it simple and allowing our emotions to come through as well, not fear emotions, but emotions, because death is and sickness is a topic that does bring about emotions. And so allowing ourselves to be a little emotional or to be free to be emotional is helpful for our children as well, to understand that these are emotional topics and they then will feel somewhat free. I think to take it a step further, I like to think of talking about death in realms of talking about other things that die. Death of people is something that children can understand in relationship to death of a pet, death of an insect, even if we want to take it to, minuscule levels. Not that insects aren't important, but animals, birds, flies, bees, even the death of a plant. They all serve a season and a purpose for being here, but when they're not here, then we can't water them, we can't feed them if it's a pet, so that they understand that this is kind of a finality, but in a way that a child, the age I believe you said was 4, can understand it. So concrete examples can really help when we're sharing this type of information, that when a person dies, just like a plant dies or a pet dies, they're no longer here to eat or to breathe, perhaps think, visit with, and so that they can understand that, the reality of the situation in a simplistic way. The longer we go on, the less they've actually heard. And, just like anything else, children will come back with questions as they come up. And so you give them a little bit of information about, how sick your father-in-law is, and that, part of life is death. And you are careful of the words you use when talking about death. One thing I always tell parents to do is not talk about it like asleep, or, they won't be coming anymore, or they've left, the home, because then they start to worry every time they go to sleep or you go to sleep that you're not going to wake up again, or every time you leave for work, you might not come back. So, we want to be careful not to get too fancy and put, wording in that may give our children the wrong connotation to think that we're all going to sleep, and when we sleep, we don't wake up.
And I think that's important, because she's also mentioned that this child has separation anxiety.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really important.
Yeah.
You don't want him to then think, mommy's going to not come back tomorrow. Mommy's not going to wake up tomorrow.
Right. Well, that's where reassurance comes in. None of us have a magic wand to say how long we're going to live, but for the most part, most people live a long time. And I think it's important to convey to our children when they start to look at, are you going to die? Because I know my own kids, when someone was sick, and they were young, that was the question, well, are you going to die? And my answer was, I expect to live a very long time, because I do expect that. I still expect that. Every day I expect that. And so, I think we want to convey that positivity and some sense of reassurance without promises, because we don't have any control over it. But to be able to help them to see the difference between, a plant, a bird, an insect, and a person in terms of death as the finality of it, not in relationship to, will we go to sleep, or we're no longer here for a meal, because that doesn't really make sense to a child. They take it very literally that if you don't come home for dinner that night, that you've also died. So we really have to check in with, again, our emotions, the strength of our words, and carefully choosing our words, and reassurance. I
love it. There's one thing that you said that I want us to touch on again, and that's about being vulnerable enough to share our own emotions. I think a lot of times we think if we share our emotions, we scare our kids, without recognizing that without sharing our emotions, we're almost not giving our kids the opportunity to feel comfortable to share theirs.
Absolutely.
And I just really love that, because I think, and this was something I was guilty of as a mom for a long time. If I was stressed, if I was sad, if things were happening in my extended family that was heavy, I would try to deal with it behind closed doors. Put the kids to bed, close the door, and then go deal with my sadness. And I realized I was robbing my kids of the opportunity to build life skills as things happen throughout our journey of life together. And so now I have the conversations very openly, and I say when I'm sad, and I say when I'm worried, but I also show them the process of coming out of that sadness and managing that worry. And I think that's the piece that they were missing before. So then when they got sad, they had no tools and no skill set of how to deal with that sadness and work their way through grief sometimes back to joy. What do you agree with that?
I agree, and I also, made the mistake years ago of kind of sheltering my children from the emotions so as they didn't feel any pain or harm, right? But really, in the end, like you said, the pain and harm is worse by trying to shelter them. We're their models. We are their models. So if we're modeling that death isn't sad, what does that say? I mean, does that say that we just, we're frozen people here, we just don't experience anything from an emotional level? And that's, as far from true in my experience than anything. And so, happy, sad, pained, I think it's important for our children to see and see how we manage it. So it's not just see us falling apart all day long every day, but how do we pick ourselves back up? And those are the realms of experiences that we need to openly share with our children so that they can learn how, when they fall apart, they can pick themselves up. When they have a death to deal with and it feels painful, how they can verbalize the pain that's in their heart and have the support and help to move forward in that processing of it too.
You know what it's also done for me, Sue? And I've always said to parents that kids come to help you continue to parent yourself. But what it's done for me is that it's shortened that process of management. Whereas before, when I was on my own, I might have wallowed in my self-pity for longer. Now, because I know they're watching the entire process, I work harder to shorten that cycle, not to not to somehow negate my emotions, to feel it fully and freely because that's what I want for them, but to show them that there's always a path back to joy. And I think that in itself has helped me grow more by opening up and being vulnerable and sharing with them.
Absolutely. And I think that, that's true of anything. It's
Mm.
true of anything. They are watching every move we make, and we are on this journey to grow with them, just as we're helping them to grow each and every moment. And so, they're sponges, like I said, they're sponges, and they're picking up on your energy. So come to it real, but don't come to it with fear. The fear is, is definitely something that you should, my suggestion is, I don't like the word should, but my suggestion is to work through what you're fearful of in the conversation with your child before you actually step into the conversation, because fear is not empowering for either one of you, for you or for your child.
I love it. I think we've got some great tips to help Lisa, so I'm just going to recap. So the first was just what you were touching on, really zone into your own emotions and try to deal with any fear that you may have about having the conversation. Process that so that when you enter the conversation, you're entering the conversation without that level of fear within you. Then we also talked about having conversations that was age and stage appropriate and not necessarily just age. So not a conversation that is suited to all 4-year-olds or all 5-year-olds, but a conversation that recognizes where your particular child is in terms of their development and being stage as well as age appropriate, which I love. Keep it simple. I like that. I think sometimes we get so caught up in our head that it's such a big deal that we can lose the simplicity of it and make it harder for us to have the discussion with our kids. Talk about debt in relation to other things. And this I love because it opens up the conversation to more than just what they're experiencing within their extended family, but to recognize that debt really is just a part of life. It's a part of the journey. Things come, they stay for a period of time, and then they move on. And I like that you also talked about making sure we use the right language. Don't fluff it up and make it airy-fairy. Don't use language. We do this, right? This is what we do. Don't use language that could suggest or promote anxiety within the child that might suggest that debt is something that's knocking on the door for all of us. And I think that's a really important one. And the last thing was to be ready for questions. Be ready and be open that after having a conversation, your kids may come back over a period of days with questions that come up for them. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Sue?
No, and I just want to tie two things together. The keep it simple offers them the opportunity to go away and process and come back with the questions. So, you keep it simple and you allow them to think. And they'll have questions if they are one of, child of curiosity and questioning, which many of our kids are. So yeah, I'd love to tie those two together. They're so important.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sue, and for helping us with this really tough question.
My pleasure.
I just want to remind everybody to please dive into Sue's work. She is an amazing heart-centered coach that can help you with every area of your life. And you can find out more about Sue's work at DeCaroParentCoaching.com. Until next time, empowerers. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Village Talk. Now remember, it still takes a village. So if you found value in this episode, be sure to like it and share it with your family and friends. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe and hit that bell icon so that we can notify you of our upcoming episodes. Remember, as we always say in this village, you're just one connection away. Until next time, empowerers, with love and gratitude from all of us at Empowered Kids TV.